You know, I know there's some craziness going on in India right now, but like here's just just another day at the Atlanta airport.
All I know is y'all touch me, I'm knocking the shit out of everybody.
Yeah, guy at the camera said, "I know if you guys touch me, I'm gonna knock the shit out of everybody." And what kind of like this looks like the Worm from X-Men.
Y'all niggas embarrassing in the bitch.
Y'all killers. I'm not gonna say what he said, but y'all killers are embarrassing as shit. And like, what is up with the ski mask? The ski mask out in public, we have to agree, has to be the stupidest thing because it's asking for you to be concealed identity so you can do some shenanigans like you would on the internet. Like, no, this isn't GTA server. This is where I live.
Y'all niggas embarrassing.
The little kid, look at the little kid swinging by. He's like, I don't want none of this. He's getting out of here faster than Sonic the Hedgehog. Look at that little blue blur. He said, I'm out of here. Bro, I'm not even lying. This is just an average day in Atlanta. Hey, y'all got kids over there, man. Like, legitimately, this is just insane. And this is actually a pretty good segue into migrant protesters storm NYC as ICE raids double. Bro, I'm telling you, right now, America, like some of these places with where deportation concentration is high, it feels like a GTA server gone wild.
Crackdown continues and some retreat in fear. People all throughout New York are stepping up.
The mayor and the president see millions of people, not only in this city,
The
but
war
across
zone,
the
literally, it's
country,
like
as
COD.
expendable.
So, as President Trump ramps up the largest targeted deportation effort in U.S. history, some of New York City's leaders
Ground Zero, yes, this is New York. This is like the more I watch from this guy's content, it makes sense why Batman was based, or like Gotham City was based around New York. It literally feels like Ground Zero for like the wildest GTA server in America.
are digging in their heels. Because although ICE's immigration crackdowns are focused on the gang members and dangerous
Damn,
individuals who've come
holy
here to
strapped.
grow their criminal empires, local progressives claim they object to immigration enforcement in the name of compassion for all immigrants. But, as you're about to see, some of that compassion may be sorely misplaced.
When our communities are under attack, what do we do?
There's no denying migrants in New York City are terrified.
I just don't understand how anybody could actually be against these immigrants who are coming in and committing crimes. I'm not putting any shame. I understand that that there's people are in a situation where they feel like they have to steal to get food, to get by, and if that's truly the case, there are systems in place that you can use, like welfare. There's food banks. There's opportunities for you to not have to steal and be a detriment to society. So I have little to no empathy for these immigrants who are coming in and just committing crimes, because I don't think any of them care to learn about food banks, about getting on welfare, about any of that. They're just gonna break the law regardless. They didn't have any respect in their own homeland, so it's not like on their journey. It's not like an anime arc where they learn how to gain respect or where they learn how to show respect.
Staying away from school, church, and work
I
to
did.
avoid arrest during an ICE immigration raid.
We will stand together against hate and attacks that seek to divide us.
This all comes on the heels of Tuesday's multi-agency operation in the Bronx, Washington Heights, and Queens. 12 targeted criminals were arrested, including an alleged ringleader of the Venezuelan Tren de Aragua gang. Authorities tracked him to New York from Colorado, and they found a loaded gun and ammunition inside his
I
Bronx
got
apartment.
fresh storage for
There
it.
were a lot of people living in that apartment.
They had a few kids. I would say like 5, I would say.
This is not a game. This is a dangerous job for the men and women of ICE, and to have that type of interference puts our officers at great risk. Now,
And I know a lot of people hear kids and they emotionally get like conflicted because they think they're separating kids from families, and I'm sure in some instances there are, but there's also instances where these kids were trafficked across the border. They were sent to some family member of a family member supposedly to get them in there, and then they have like 5, 6, 7, 8 kids living in an apartment that are all paying rent, food. They're just being extorted. It's almost like indentured slavery. It's crazy. It's a true reality that we have to face.
not only the officers, It puts the aliens at great risk because anything can happen when we take our eyes off the goal here. So
it is in this ever-intensifying atmosphere that ICE agents' field tactics, specifically what places are off limits, once again dominates the collective conversation about where migrants can feel safe in New York City.
So as activists lose their minds, many New Yorkers are happy they're no longer losing their communities to criminals. And what none of these people will tell you is that every immigration position they say they're against has the potential to not only make our city safer, but to benefit the very immigrant communities they say they're sticking up for. For example, with President Trump signing the Laken Riley Act, anyone in the country illegally must be held in federal custody if they're accused of theft or a violent crime, something New York City's legal system,
which should be done,
will not do. In fact, we release our violent criminal.
You know, the sad thing is hold on, when I see something
crime,
like this,
something New York.
You see the gun with the little thing, it means like, hey, this is no guns here. Like, you don't even need words for this. Like, we can get the the idea. It's not like law-abiding citizens are gonna follow they're gonna follow this. It's criminals who aren't gonna follow this. So all you're gonna do is just put more good people at a higher risk of being in a really bad situation without a way to defend themselves.
New York City's legal system will not do. In fact, we release our violent criminals, which is why we've got problems with out-of-control shoplifting, rampant robberies, and subway crime. Our legal system sees these as non-jailable misdemeanor offenses, which means instead of people going to jail, they get unlimited second chances to reoffend. Something these gang members immediately get to work on after nothing happens to them. However, that's about to change because ICE is here. They're making arrests, and if you're a member of New York City's criminal community with an immigration violation, this sanctuary city may be the wrong place to live unlawfully. Which brings us to the real reason why all of these activists are so upset about this. To them, open borders are more important than criminal records. Even if the people with criminal records tend to prey upon the working class and law-abiding immigrants the most. Something gangs like Tren de Aragua from Venezuela start doing almost as soon as they get here, embedding themselves in a local community where they go about afflicting those around them who they see as human capital to be best used for furthering their gang's ambitions.
It's just shameless.
Which is why they traffic everything from products to people along our streets and sidewalks. But as you're about to see, even though many New Yorkers are happy that their neighborhoods are now safer, our leaders are gearing up to do things that will protect dangerous criminals, no matter what it costs them.
It blows my mind that the Roosevelt Hotel is not even owned by America. Wasn't it owned by like Pakistan or something like that?
So here we are at the Roosevelt Hotel, New York City's flagship shelter for asylum seekers in Midtown. And although our leaders act as if their immigration resistance movement exists for all immigrants, there are some immigrants living in this very facility who wish it didn't, because they're living in a building next to gang members, and they don't want their kids getting sucked into the criminal underworld. But in the name of resistance, our leaders have a plan to flood nonprofits with money that's going to be used to help immigrants resist these deportation efforts. But since these deportation efforts,
I disagree with the idea of banning all guns or banning guns for all people. I disagree with that. I think the best way to stop a bad guy with the gun is a good guy with the gun. But I definitely agree with the imprisonment, the lifetime imprisonment for these criminals coming over and breaking the law and disregarding the law. I definitely agree with that.
Are only focused on criminals. It looks like some of the gang members living in places like this might get to stay.
We will stand together against hate and attacks that seek to divide us.
The New York City Council
is
providing more than $2 million in emergency funding to nonprofits helping immigrant communities.
So it looks like our leaders have decided that the best way to resist President Trump is to flood nonprofits with money that they can then go and use to advocate for immigrants. Never mind, these nonprofits do such a great job advocating that after people get evicted from a hotel like this, they end up living in a tent somewhere because they couldn't find a job or provide for themselves, despite the billions of dollars in funding that have gone to every organization who says they care. Which is too bad, because the people they claim to care about end up getting trapped in a never-ending cycle of poverty that just won't stop, and it all starts from the moment they move into.
And we're finding that out very quickly over here in the West, with Elon going in with his most recently gifted his chainsaw of democracy, and just shredding through a lot of these three-lettered organizations.
One of these facilities. These shelters, they might feed and house and clothe people, but they don't employ those people. They don't give them any tools for success. And now that we know gang members are living in places like this, it's obvious they don't keep immigrants safe either. And as you're about to see, all of this activism does nothing but protect a dangerous status quo that's invading neighborhoods all over town, filling them with the types of gang activity nobody running New York ever thought would make its way here. And even though everyone knows it's here, right here in this building, since we don't like Trump over here in New York, we're going to do everything we can to protect those criminals.
Why, this all comes on the heels of Tuesday's multi-agency operation in the Bronx, Washington Heights, and Queens. 12 targeted criminals were arrested, including an alleged ringleader of the Venezuelan Tren de Aragua gang. Authorities tracked.
Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Why would they want these immigrants and these criminals to come over here and stay in America? Why would they defend them? I legitimately... I'm trying to figure out a way to, like, steel man an argument and, like, try to play devil's advocate, but I can't even think of a way.
Him to New York from Colorado, and they found a loaded gun.
Why do these people not go here legally? Now, this is where it's like me speaking out of both sides of my mouth. I would say to get here in America legally is definitely a challenge. It's not easy. Even if you do all the things right, you go to somebody to apply for, you go to, you know, the area that you need to go to get your visa. You meet them in person, and the person there just doesn't like you. Just because you've done all your, you know, all the things that you need to do, they still may deny you. So it definitely, we need to work on our immigration process for sure. But these people are, there's so many that aren't even trying, that even if it was easy, they still wouldn't even try.
Ammunition inside his Bronx apartment.
So while ICE is out there taking down gang members who are living in apartments next to families with children, sometimes even having children inside their own apartments, instead of our leaders offering to help get those gang members out of our communities, they're spinning this all around as if it's an attack on every single immigrant that lives here, which it's not. It's the gang members that are attacking immigrants, and when police remove them from a community, whether it's the NYPD or ICE, that asylum shelter, that neighborhood, it is now safer, and the people who do live there are in better hands. Yet for some reason, our leaders are under the impression that law enforcement activity and immigration are somehow toxic to one another. Yet it is the absence of law enforcement that empowers the criminals who are making a living off the backs of everyone around them, while putting their neighbors and everyone who lives with them in danger.
Were there a lot of people living in that apartment? I have no idea. Oh yeah, they had a few kids. I would say that, like 5, I would say. I really, for what I've seen.
So this is one of the neighbors of a Tren de Aragua gang member who was taken down by ICE in an early morning raid, and the New York Post is interviewing about what it was like living next to them. He says there were small children and other people living in this apartment with this person.
Once more, there is a chance that these kids that get, you know, they're not a chance. There's a small percentage. It's a reality. It's not a chance. It's a reality that there is a percentage of these kids who get shipped across the border. They get a sticky note on their back from an address. They get to that address. That person, once they're there, sends them to a family member of a family member, maybe a friend of a family member who has 5, 6 kids living in an apartment in New York, which is tiny, no space. 5 or 6 of them. They're all working to pay food, partial rent, and whatnot, and completely extorting these kids. And it's almost like, 1, it's child trafficking. 2, it's like indentured slavery. It's insane.
Everyone in that building was in danger. An ICE raid in that building was a good thing. That building, everybody there, they're now safer. Yet somehow this is an attack on everybody? I don't think so. The neighbors are thrilled. These criminals are off the streets, out of their building, out of their neighborhoods for good now. And look at this map. These raids are taking place in the Bronx and in Queens. These raids are not taking place in the city.
This is like breaking, like those look like gates from Solo Leveling just breaking out, and instead they're just breaking into these cartels, these gangs, and just breaking them out. Oh my gosh. It's like literally like low-level dungeons of a whole bunch of side quests just on that map.
Just zip codes, which certainly helps explain why pampered progressives have a misguided view of all this and are calling it an attack on everyone. And to anyone looking at this with a reasonable viewpoint, there's no way that can possibly be true. But there's something else that our leaders are very upset about.
Mayor Eric Adams says he directed the NYPD to coordinate with federal authorities for this operation because the targets were wanted criminals, and so the cooperation did not violate the city's sanctuary city laws.
Working with the mayor of New York City, was fantastic. I talked to him 4 or 5 times last night about what we were doing our operation.
Oh, no. Nope, you can't do that. You can't be the mayor of a sanctuary city that harbors gang members and then work with a president who's a Republican to get rid of a big no-no. Even though one of these gang members is described as the leader of the gang that took over apartments in Colorado, capturing the country's attention. And when we talk about this resistance movement, it's important to understand what started it. It's this memo that was issued by the mayor, a memo which tells city employees not to actively resist federal agents if they show up at a city-run site and those employees feel threatened, which isn't crazy at all. In fact, it's a crime to impede a federal investigation and harbor a criminal. However, all of these protests forced the mayor's office to release this new set of protocols for interactions with non-local law enforcement, which basically instructs city employees to tell federal agents that if they don't have a warrant to take a hike. But the mayor's also very clear that this does not contradict his prior instructions for city employees not to get in the way of armed federal agents who may be carrying out actions that are perfectly within the law.
We're not going to tolerate it anymore. This is not a game. When we show up these sites, this is a dangerous job for the men and women of ICE and Border Patrol and all the DOJ agencies. To have that type of interference puts our officers at great risk. Not only the officers, it puts the aliens at great risk because anything can happen when we take our eyes off the goal.
So let's imagine that ICE goes into a building looking for a dangerous gang member. That person, if they're armed, which they often are, if they know that ICE is coming and they decide to resist, things could get dangerous for other people who are in that apartment or in that building. And in the case of a city-run housing facility, you're putting families in danger, some of whom have little kids. And that's why it's so bad that people like this are in our communities. Their presence there.
And this is why I have no real empathy for these people who are just outright breaking crime and having no respect for communities.
It puts the community at risk from their activities and also from what they might.
They're thinking with their heart, but they're not really thinking past their first impulse of it. They're not actually thinking about the picture, the greater picture, what's given up. Like, there's no perfect solution, right? So even if I'm saying, we got to go in there and we got to get rid of these immigrants, there's going to be a lot of negative that comes out of it. Sometimes it's going to be normal families, normal families that have tried to come over here, that are trying to do the right thing, but hey, you came over here illegally, that's still breaking the law. You're actually going to separate some families. So there's nothing that we could do that's perfect, but we can't stop good, or we can't stop progress in the name of perfection.
Do when it comes time to arrest them. Yet we want to fight ICE, even though the reality is that these enforcement actions make the world a better place because there are now less gang members roaming around in it. And some of these advocates, they're out there getting people riled up, getting them to chant that they're going to stand up and fight back. That's a little radical. And I get that this is a sanctuary city, but at some point we've got to realize that it's one thing not to cooperate with the federal government, but it's quite another to tell city employees or people in general to actively resist the federal government. That's just dumb activism, and it's making everyone less safe. Yeah.
And you're talking about you want to stop division, yet you're doing the actions to cause the division. It's hypocritical.
And none of that is stopping the leaders of this resistance movement from twisting around the truth and instilling fear in the hearts of everyone who lives in our city. So probably the biggest falsehood being spread about these ICE-related crackdowns is that they're bad for everybody in New York, no matter who you are, that they make our city less safe. And the people adhering to this line of thinking are so set in it. There is no room for negotiation. And every single time you hear about an ICE-related crackdown of a gang member, they say that this is just the first step towards rounding up everybody, which means there must be political gain behind lawmakers trying to scare everyone.
Critics are now pointing to this as just the latest troubling behavior by Mayor Adams, who's shown willingness to work with the Trump administration.
The mayor and the president see millions of people.
Oh my God.
Not only in this.
Him cooperating with the president is seen as a negative thing. Are you listening to this? Hold on.
Behind lawmakers trying to scare everyone.
Critics are now pointing to this as just the latest troubling behavior by Mayor Adams, who's shown willingness to work with the Trump administration.
Showing willingness to work is now troublesome behavior. Wow, that's a slippery slope.
The mayor and the president see millions of people, not only in this city, but across the country as expendable.
So the resistance movement says this is just about removing people from our country for no reason. But that's not what ICE or anybody in charge of this says.
I looked at the numbers this morning. ICE has already arrested just short of 12,000 people in this country. Vast majority are of criminals, public safety threats. And that's what we're trying to do. And for any mayor or governor who doesn't want public safety threats removed from the communities, I find it hard to believe that. But we're going to do it, with or without them.
So ICE says one
I
thing,
love Dom,
the
man.
protesters
What a
say another,
gangster.
but what is reality showing us? Reality is showing us that we have a small number of ICE agents who are out in the field engaging in these targeted operations. These are not mass roundups. In fact, as of the filming of this video, there has not been an ICE presence at any of these asylum shelters. Now that eventually might change, but ICE has said they're going after the worst first, like that gang leader who was in an apartment with a weapon and other people. Which brings up a very interesting point, because the thing that has activists fuming is that ICE would arrest anybody who's not a gang member. But who exactly is it that's living with a gang member and is an adult? Are they also gang members we just don't know about yet? Are they somehow helping or harboring that criminal, giving them a place to hide? And this guy was a gang ringleader. He wasn't nobody. How could the people living with him have had no idea about that, especially when he was keeping weapons in the house? The only way for activists to be upset about this is if they're not asking the right questions. They're all upset about the idea of collateral arrests, yet they're not concerned at all why
is this shit in like Japanese?
somebody would be living with gang members or other criminals.
So there's one couple with about 5 kids that were living in that apartment.
I don't know if it was a couple, but I know a
He's like, stop filming me, man. I don't want to be a snitch.
woman, a few kids, and somebody in their 50s.
Okay.
Male in their 50s.
Okay.
That I've seen. But I mean, you never know if there are more people there.
So one way of looking at this raid was that a whole bunch of people had ICE agents in their apartment for absolutely no reason. Another way of looking at it is that you had little kids that were living with gang members and now don't have to anymore.
Definitely two sides of the same coin right there. There's definitely a side of like, hey, you have cops and like government officials in your home. It's a little unwarranted. It's a little unwelcoming. But at the same time, if you live in a community that's been infested with legitimate like high-level gang members, you probably want them out, and you probably are going to feel safer afterwards.
They may have been rescued, and no one's curious about why those children were in that apartment. Whose children were they? And who was the older person living in that apartment, and what was their connection to this whole thing? And what's crazy is even though armed criminals like this are living in our communities, our leaders are getting people all riled up and all scared. And some people may take them at their word. They may say, you know what, I'm going to actively resist federal agents if they come to my building. That would be terrible. More people are just going to be in danger if this goes down.
We're going to do it with the present promise American people. We're going to make our communities safer by
what's up,
targeting those who are in the country legally that have criminal record or a public safety threat. That's what we're doing. But if you force us into the community and not let us get the bad guy into jail, that's going to put the community at risk.
So there it is. ICE is not coming for everyone. They're coming for criminals. But if they find people who are with criminals at the time of arrest, and those people are in the country unlawfully, they're also going to get arrested. And what's crazy is the border czar says that collateral arrests are actually going to be more common in New York because the city will not cooperate with ICE. For example, if a dangerous individual is held in a county jail and a sanctuary city will not let ICE agents in or won't tell ICE that that person's there, that person's going to end up getting released. They're going to go back to their apartment, back to their shelter, back to their community, put everybody in danger, and then ICE is going to have to go get them when they're in public and may be armed, which wasn't the case when they were behind bars. Yet here we are with activists who run our city telling everyone that communities are less safe when the gang members are taken away from them. An idea that literally makes no sense. In fact, every single position that these advocates are taking is just going to continue making the city more dangerous. And if anything, this is a sanctuary city. Activists have had their chance to prove that they're on the right side of history. But here,
man, a sanctuary city makes it feel like it's supposed to be a safe place, but really all it does is just harbor criminals.
We are just a couple of years after the asylum crisis started, and we've got gangs living throughout our city.
Which means low IQ people, opportunists, and people who don't respect themselves or the people around them. That all together leads for a very nasty mix.
Propped up and protected by our legal system. And nobody who's brought this upon us wants it to change. Do you think it should change? How would you change it?
Absolutely, I think it should change. And in fact, the thing that's most troublesome to me is the kids. You guys know, I think the next generation is the most important generation, and it's up to us to work our little ass off to give back and be able to give the same opportunities that we were given, if not more opportunities for the next generation, and inspire them to be better. And if once more we call ourselves a sanctuary city, and we just harbor criminals, that means we're just harboring low IQ people who are opportunists most oftentimes, who don't have respect for themselves or the people around them. That does not seem like that's going to lead for, let's say, optimism for the next generation. So, we learned about some shit that was going down on the East Coast up in New York. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, then please like the video, subscribe, and if you really like it, then share it with some of your friends. My goal here is to spread a positive message while sprinkling my 2 cents on big topics like American, Indian, and world geopolitics, and even small stuff like Twitch drama and online debacles. And if you want to see it live, come join me over on Twitch. Twitch.tv/ActuallyElrod. That's where I'm going to do all my reactions, and after the reactions, that's where we get down a game. And if you're like, hey, I have a video that I want this dude to sprinkle his 2 cents on, then come over on my Discord and let me know and join the community there. And while we're at it, I have to say thank you to everybody who has made that Discord just so poppin'. I never thought I'd have a Discord that's so flowing. It's really cool to see. Shout out to you, Bobby, Omni, Demon, all of you who have been in there who are just super active. Logie, you're the man. Logie is the one who's like modding and helping run the server, so thank you, Logie. Lastly, I challenge you. I have a challenge for you. Make somebody laugh today. We all know there's enough hate and vitriol in the world. If energy is contagious like the flu, then let's spread and get everyone contagious with our positive energy, right? Not negative energy, because there's so much of that, and if we could just be a small little change in someone's day, then you never know. Maybe that's the thing that starts shifting this world to a happier, healthier, just better place. And with all that said and done, thank you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.